For it now. If you think we're all ready, we'll get started. I'll call to order this meeting of the Harbor Shellfish Advisory Board. Today is May 7th, 2019. Approval of tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Peter, you've got this, the agenda's dated April 16th, but this is today's agenda, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, well.
That's okay. That's all right.
Didn't matter. 6 people showed up.
Yes.
The one that was sent out is dated May.
Yeah.
Okay. Only the date is different, hopefully, with the agenda I'm going by here.
Town clerk's office didn't notice it.
Okay. Wonderful job with the minutes. Do we have approval?
Did everybody get a chance to read them because I didn't get them done in time to send them out last night, which didn't give you more than just today to read them, so.
I read them when I was coming back from up harbor.
Okay.
I didn't actually read them, no.
Okay, we can wait while people skim over them.
Okay.
Okay.
Or that's not for me to say, sorry, Andy.
Would you like to continue a little later, Ginger, with the approval of the minutes?
If everybody else has read them and is fine with it, I will take their word for it. I haven't,
Do we have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second? Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Sorry, aye.
aye.
All right. Chairman's report. If everybody feels good about moving forward with electing officers, I will entertain nominations.
What offices are there?
Chairman, vice chairman, and secretary. Peter's been the secretary for the past several years. I've been the chairman, and our last vice chair was Ginger, actually, I believe.
I don't think I agreed to do that.
Right, right. And that's
Fritz.
fine. It was Fritz. Okay.
I have no ambition to do anything other than sit in a chair here.
That's fine, and we appreciate your presence and your input as a board member, Ginger. Mr. Franzuto expressed interest in being vice chair, which the role of the vice chair is to simply chair the meeting when the chairman cannot attend. Secretary's role is quite involved, as you can see, and Peter does a good job with that, and I believe is still interested in holding the seat if the rest of the board will have him there. And I'll say that I'm certainly interested in continuing being the chairman if the board wishes so. So I will entertain nominations.
I'll make that slate of nominations, the 3 positions.
Yeah, that's
I'll second it.
Can we do
Or
all 3 at once, Peter?
Sure.
All in favor of the nominations as myself as chairman, Mr. Franzuto as vice chairman, and Mr. Brace as secretary.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Thank you. I just attended at 3:30. There was a presentation by Dylan Fernandez and Julian Sear together down at the Shellfish Hatchery. They presented us with $58,000 of the shellfish to go toward shellfish propagation. It was actually quite exciting to see both representatives there in attendance, happily handing over a very large cardboard check.
I saw that.
You may have when you were coming in. So that was exciting to see. I also got a chance to see Emily Molden there. If any of you are not familiar with Emily, she is the new, is it executive director?
That's correct.
Of the Land Council. She took the place of Cormac Collier, and I've asked her to come into our next meeting to talk to us about the Land Council's goals and objectives, their priorities, their what they would like to see, move forward with, where we can help and support them in any way with things that relate to us, which a lot that they have to do relates to us. They do monitoring at the landfill. They monitor stormwater exit points that come into the harbor, and of course, as you all know, they they're our biggest concerned group for the environment here on the island. So it should be interesting to hear what she has to say. If any of you have anything in particular you'd like to hear her talk about, please let me know ahead of time. I'll be talking to her before our next meeting to go over items that she'll be speaking about. So please forward any thoughts and ideas to me, and I will relay that to her. Moving forward with the Marine Department report, I'm going to read a text from Sheila Lucy. She's busy and unable to make it. They've accomplished the following. Floating docks have been repaired by the harbor master staff and have been reinstalled. The main pier, continuing to work on, will be ready to open by the May 20th. Nantucket buoys 10 through 26 have been commissioned. We'll have Nantucket Harbor complete on Thursday. That's where she is today. She's setting buoys in Nantucket, I believe. We'll have all rock and no wake and no anchoring buoys commissioned prior to Memorial Day weekend. Working on beach access signs and lifeguard equipment. She will have pump out capabilities prior to Memorial Day weekend. So I'm sorry she couldn't be here, but she's is short-staffed this time of year, and I appreciate her sending that message on to us. Not seeing Jeff here. I know Concom has a very large agenda. So there are times when we don't have representation from either. We like to see them as often as possible, but at the same time, it's we need to excuse them, knowing that they're busy. Jeff was at the presentation of that check at the hatchery.
Now, what does that go towards the hatchery?
Yeah, shellfish propagation.
Nice.
And
I'm sorry, did that come from anywhere in particular? That the money, is it?
it was state funding. There was an article in the newspaper about it that both Representatives Fernandez and Sear lobbied for.
Okay.
So I wish I could explain that a little
Wasn't
better.
one of the new taxes that?
Not yet,
Okay,
no.
not yet.
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with the Airbnb tax, but they did say that this would be funding that would also be coming to us next year. So,
Same money, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's great.
And yes, every little bit counts. So it's definitely nice to see. And both representatives commented and complimented on Nantucket's efforts into shellfish propagation and us being one of the first to pioneer a plant here, and all the volunteers involved that have helped it come to what we see today. So, and of course, the town just recently did an over $2 million renovation project there. So we've certainly invested a lot into that, and hopefully, we're seeing some fresher results.
I have two sort of natural resources related things, if you don't mind.
I'm sorry?
I said I have two natural resources related things. I got an email from Tara Riley this afternoon, actually this morning, kind of out of the blue, and I'm just going to read it. Tonight is our last class with Roger Williams, and I don't know what that is.
The university?
Okay.
It's an online class that they've been doing there at the...
That the hatchery staff has been taking online live on Tuesdays. It has been important to attend these classes live so that we are able to ask the questions we need to ask. Unfortunately, they have been during the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board time slot. I expect we will be available for the next meeting to resume our NRD reports on the upcoming season. Thanks to your patience. So I guess we'll be seeing more of Tara. And then in relation to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee that the selectmen, I guess, created, or Coastal Resiliency Work Group, I've got this bit of information that came from the other group. I'm a part of the Nantucket Coastal Conservancy, showing what the membership would be. And I don't know if you saw that, Andy, but one member of the Conservation Commission, one member of the Planning Board, one member of the Select Board, one member of the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory Board, one designee provided by the Nantucket Conservation Foundation or an established island conservation group, one member of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers, and 3 members from the public. And then
For a total of how many members?
looks like 9 members, it looks like. And then the staff will be the staff assistants will be the Coastal Resiliency Coordinator, for which there is currently a job listing for the town. So I guess we should find out when the selectmen want us to submit somebody who would want to serve on that board. So.
Did you mention before when we talked about this at the last meeting that you were interested in that position?
Sure. But we should wait till I'm sure they'll say, could we get your, or I could go see Erica and see what's what with this.
If you could follow up with when they would like a name by. Okay. I would certainly be interested also, but whether I get there or not, that's fine. I would probably attend the meetings as much as I could, and you expressed your interest first, and I trust your presence there would be as good as any board member. So I'm glad we get a seat, because the first initial makeup of this committee did not include us. I just happened to be at the select board meeting and requested that they consider somebody from our board to be on that committee, and so I'm very thankful that that they considered us and gave us a seat there. Any other board member comments on something related to Marine Department or natural resources? Going to share with you a quick text from Rob McNeil. He shared with me an email a few weeks ago after the last Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day. They had an incident where a large business brought out a large amount of waste oil / other automobile fluids, and come to find out this particular business was not signed up with the DEP or the EPA, and actually was hauling more fluid than is allowed to without a special license. And they actually held the truck at the DPW because the driver was not licensed to haul that much contaminant.
Wow.
And that much contaminant is not allowed at Hazardous Waste Day. They should be working with Safety Clean or Clean Harbors, as other large businesses do. So I think our voice, in a way, has been heard with this. It's opened some eyes. It's created some awareness. And but I think we have a long way to go. I was talking with a new hire that's at the DPW that's working more with how the composter works and how they're changing how we process our garbage before we bring it to the landfill. Her name is Graham. She's anyhow, her first name's Graham, and she said there's been a lot of discussion at their office. She works with Mr. McNeil, and they're still not on board with creating a collection facility. Reasons being it would be very expensive. And personally, I feel it would be a good investment no matter how expensive it is. So I think we have more work to do here, but it is good to see that progress is being made. Mr. McNeil will be speaking to the Shellfish Association at their next meeting, which is on May 20th. They meet at the Mariah Mitchell, what used to be the library, behind the Hinchman House on the corner of Vestal Street and Milk. And the meetings are usually at 5:15. He has written here 5, but being a member of the NSA and usually attending their meetings, it's been at 5:15. So, and the NSA, if for the new members, if you're not familiar, Nantucket Shellfish Association, they're a nonprofit organization. They put on the Scallopers Ball. That's their biggest fundraiser every year. And very active in trying to create awareness, trying to come up with ideas that can help with our water quality and enhance the fisheries here. And they do have a bank account that they're willing to use generously for the right purpose. They've been instrumental in getting the health department and the town of Nantucket to move forward with trying to create a water quality testing plant right here on island. And that's one of their biggest agendas at this moment. But they do have interest in a lot of areas. So their existence is certainly to be thankful for. Any questions, discussion on hazardous materials? Board members? If not, lodging tax distributions in relation to water quality. I've kept this on the agenda. Actually, I didn't bring the letter in with me. I was, Tucker Holland reached out from Nantucket Housing Trust. It might be, he's our housing specialist, actually, in a position with the town of Nantucket as the housing specialist, and then there's the group, the Nantucket Housing Trust, I believe. They were looking for, they actually sent a letter to the select board looking to encourage the select board to spend 50% of the proceeds taken in from the lodging tax, the new Airbnb tax for affordable housing. and they were nice enough to add in their request or suggest that the rest be put towards water quality and infrastructure improvements. They suggest that we craft the same type of letter and present it to the select board also. I verbally requested that at the select board meeting when they were first discussing this, and the room was full of real estate agents and you know, a lot of people kind of against the tax, and me kind of, I see this tax being created as a mitigation for impacts, and a lot of our impacts are felt by the harbor, and I really think a large focus and earmark, so to speak, should be created for water quality improvements. So if the board feels that we should present a letter to the select board, it certainly can't hurt to remind them that we're here and what our concerns are, and what we feel these monies should be prioritized for, because I think as time goes on and this money does start coming in, the hands will constantly be reaching out and grasping for this, so it can't hurt to put out a reminder. I'll take comments from the board.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's very important, and I think a lot more could be done with enforcement. If that could be
Enforcement of?
Well, for example, the fertilizer regulations and the hazardous waste regulations, because clearly if there was a large hauler, you know, if there was a hauler who was too big for hazardous waste day to fly under the radar for who knows how long, you know, an extra set of eyes and ears might not be a bad thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've seen, you know, the landscapers pouring the green juice into the hanging baskets right over the Easy Street Basin. So, you know, it would be nice to if we can't enforce our existing regulations, there's no point in talking about further ones.
Well, if anybody's willing to, I mean, you're getting into another subject with fertilizer, and Peter or Tom, if you recall, or you, Ginger, what Roberto said when Mr. Barada stood up and at the Pond Forum meeting, he mentioned you know, an outright ban on fertilizers and pesticides, and I guess the state doesn't allow us to do that, but Mr. Santa Maria from the health department had a comment of something that they were working on and moving forward to hopefully give us some more regulatory authority, and I'm not sure what that was. Do either of you recall?
I don't recall at that point.
I'd love to have a board member step forward. Nobody has to commit at this point, but it's just a thought, to have somebody willing to just drop in the office occasionally and talk to Roberto, and maybe be a liaison back to us of what they're moving forward with at the health department, especially with regulations like the fertilizers, and also reaching out to other smaller garages that we know are probably several backyard automobile shops on this island that, you know, do we have enough staff? Is there staff out there that is searching out these places and to make sure they're dealing with their hazardous waste products correctly? It's a lot of work here to keep up with all the moving parts on this island, and ones that can have a negative effect on our environment are in great numbers, and to keep up with all these with the boards and let them know that we're concerned and we're hoping things move forward and that we're here to support them if they need more manpower. And I realize that means a larger payroll in the town and our operating budget going up. But this is an area that I feel needs some more manpower. I don't see how you can possibly watch over everybody who's spreading fertilizer. And I don't know if I mentioned this at the last meeting, but I noticed a truck weighted down so heavy with bags of fertilizer. But not only that, on the back there was a 3-wheeled machine that a person sits on with a big, huge hopper on it. It was almost like a golf course machine. But it was a private landscaper. He wasn't on his way to a golf course. He was on his way to private yards. And so now we have actual ride-on mechanical machines broadcasting fertilizer. I was just, my jaw dropped when I saw this machine on the back of the truck. It's on a ramp that goes into the receiver hitch, so it's set lower and was ready to be deployed.
I think we've gone full circle into what Ginger brought up about maybe looking to earmark some of this new tax for enforcement. I mean, really, that as I said, if we've got rules, and Roberto at that meeting he was talking about some range 100 feet. I forget what I got confused because there was sewer discussion, septic discussion at the same time.
You were there also.
Yeah.
Great.
And so I got confused as to which was the fertilizer part and which was the new septic regulations they're working. But without any enforcement, or without enough enforcement, with the hazardous waste, as you say, reaching out to these mom and pop operators, who are the backyard operators, somebody to get out and just check in with them and make sure it's going well. And it's going to cost money, but probably a good use for part of the tax.
So, Mr. Chairman, since we were mentioning the Pond Coalition meeting, I mean, I think I would like to have a discussion, maybe not now, but if we could do it next time, if there's time, just to discuss the meeting and some of the things that were said. And one of the things that I was reminded of is something that's always been a little bit of a burr under my saddle, so to speak, is the irrigation water is free because it's technically going back into the quote-unquote groundwater. But if we're pumping from the lens below, and then people don't have to pay water and sewer fees for the irrigation water, I mean, I think that could stop. And that would help slow down the flushing of nitrogen from lawns into the watershed.
Maybe we can get an opinion from Emily next week.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I don't want to load up our agenda with too much of our concerns, wanting to allow Emily to make her presentation from Land Council, but that's certainly, something that we can discuss at our next meeting.
Okay, great.
Got it noted.
It had occurred to me that particularly at the Pond Coalition meeting, where they were talking about all the testing that has been done in the past and that's being done now, is that if you're consistently asking the wrong questions, you're never going to get a useful answer. And if you're testing more for nitrogen and potassium and not looking at some of the hydrocarbons and some of the other things that we're talking about with the hazardous materials, that was kind of prompted by the sewer incident in Sconset. But there's multiple sources we could address. So. Just a thought.
Awesome.
Andy?
Peter?
From the minutes, I think I remember Dave saying that, or maybe it was Jeff. Jeff said that to get some of that money, we have to have something we have to have a use for it. We have to have a stated use, and then what do? We apply for eligibility to the EPA or the DEP to get the money. And Jeff did say that it's fairly easy, just filling out a form. So, us as a board, if we see a use that we want the money to go to, we need to arrive at that and then come up with a letter of recommendation to Jeff, I guess, or the selectman, whichever. Maybe we need Jeff to tell us who the letter goes to. But we should narrow down what we think, maybe top 3 things the money should go toward.
Well, this is like a 4-part tax, and the eligibility part determined by the EPA. That would be a specific earmark for water quality only. And did Jeff say he was going to somehow move forward with trying to get that EPA eligibility? Because otherwise the town is going to implement a 6% tax, and
right.
The state gets a 5% tax or 6.5%. I don't have the numbers completely right. The town can choose to make it less, up to 6%, and that can be spent any way they wish.
Okay.
So the 2.57 or 2.75, we will only get if the EPA.
Right. What he was saying was that it's fairly easy to
get the eligibility.
Just put in a form and say what you want it for, and they pretty much give it to you. And us being ahead of the curve with having a sewage collection in place before a lot of the Cape did. We've done a lot of the things that they would ask if we did it or not. So we're way ahead of the curve, I guess. So.
Okay, but did he say he was going to move forward with filling out that form, or?
He did not.
All right. So I feel like it's a ball dropped in a way until we know more from Jeff on how to move forward with that form getting filled out and if we should be. I'm not recalling all the discussion on that.
Okay.
So
Dave seemed to know. He seemed to have quite a bit of thoughts on it when he was here at the last meeting when he was here and I was here. He seemed to
on this particular
on applying for funds and what had to be in place to get them.
All right. Well, we'll pick Dave's brain. You're not. I'm just hoping you're not confusing that with other monies we were talking about, like the embarkation fee and the waterways.
It's possible.
There were 2 other. They're Articles 22 and 24.
Okay. Yeah.
That are in the annual town meeting every year.
Right.
And I was
right.
questioning, and Dave knew an awful lot about where that embarkation fee goes and the waterways improvement
my
fund.
point is that he seems to grasp bureaucracy well.
Yes. Well, he certainly had decades of experience there that we're hoping to tap into through his tenure here. So, any other discussion at this point on the lodging tax? Peter, if I were to show you get that letter to you from the Nantucket Housing Trust, would you have time to craft something, or could we put something together tomorrow before the select board meeting, or?
What refresh my memory.
Well, because they felt, just to back up some, the Housing Trust sent their letter requesting 50% be used for affordable housing, and they suggested that we do the same as far as water quality. The other 50% go to water quality. And as I mentioned, I did request that more as, that just came up at a select board meeting that I was attending, and so it wasn't a formal request from SHAB. I simply took it upon myself to ask the select board to consider more monies go towards water quality improvement. So I'm wondering if you could assist in,
Yeah,
if the rest of the board agrees with moving forward with that, because tomorrow night is the next select board meeting, and I could attend and simply present the letter to them during public comment.
Sure, as long as you can get me that letter, and so I know the terminology, what I'm going to be using, and how I'm going to write it. I can just write it up tomorrow on the board's behalf.
Okay.
So if you want to leave it in an envelope for me and tack it to your door, your back door or something. I could
Okay,
come
we'll
by.
go over that after the meeting.
All right.
Remind me. Just to let the new members know, I've kind of taken it upon myself, hoping that it gives us a bit of a louder voice when we do have an advisement that we take to the select board, to bring it to them in person at a meeting during public comment, read it out loud. And so not only is the select board hearing it, but the rest of the public who's concerned and listening in hears it also. And it's not something, I exactly feel comfortable with, but I feel compelled to do it. And it's not all that often that we bring recommendations of advisement to the select board, but when we do, they need to be presented to the board, well-researched, analyzed, and prepared. And we don't just go to them with a shoot from the hip idea. We need to have some type of resolution that comes along with the advisement. If it's something that requires resolution, something like this is more of, hey, just a reminder, this is where we'd like to see you focusing more money towards. And the biggest thing on our list, as far as new money being spent, would be our storm drains, especially the ones that enter into the harbor. And they're in disrepair, and they've needed attention for a long time, and a lot of people agree with this, and this is well known, but we need to see some action starting to take place with this. We've heard about it for a long time, and now it's time to see action. And when I see money coming in like this can make action happen. So,
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
Sorry, Ginger, before anybody motions, do you want to give me some more things I'm going to put in this letter? More things, storm drains being number one, in terms of where we think the money should be spent if it goes to water quality.
I think we should, we can say water quality and/or hazardous waste, but I hate to add up too much. We've been knocking them on the hazardous waste, and I really think, with the new building they're hoping to build out there, that hopefully they find money in another area to create a hazardous waste facility. That's in the long haul. My idea would be to focus on the storm drains, thinking that this isn't going to start out to be a big cash cow, though I feel it should be. If everybody were honest about it, I think this is going to bring in a considerable amount of cash. That being said,
I like the idea of focusing on the storm drains. It's going to take a lot of money anyway, and it's a good specific recommendation as opposed to water quality. So if we just say we'd like to see it go toward, repairing the storm drains, I think that would be a good way to start.
I don't know if the storm drains would cover that thing down by the Great Harbor Yacht Club, but that's never been cleaned out. I don't know if that would be considered under a storm drain system.
It's a storm drain filter, and that's one of the three biggest that have been on my list, and I use it as an example.
It won't
I'm
hurt.
still saddened that the huge parking area there was taken away, and it's supposed to be this filter to take care of runoff as far up as Pleasant Street, and when I see it in the condition that it's in, it saddens me that it makes me want to get a volunteer group to get in there right away and pick it up, and because there's just not enough hands out there, obviously, with the DPW and what they have going on. I'm led to feel that sewer department has been spurred off of Department of Public Works to now we need a little spur off called the storm drain department. So they're focusing on this all the time because a lot of these storm drains should have filters in them, oil separators, and they require weekly maintenance. And the way people are just pouring mulch everywhere, and when we get a rainstorm, all the storm drains are getting choked up and silted over with sand and mulch. And this was something I was talking with Emily Molden about, not to get too far off the subject, but it's amazing. I take one place in particular, a house that's been being rebuilt on Westchester Street, and every time it rains, you can follow the dirt path all the way down the street to the Gull Island Lane water retention area. The water has turned brown with silt in there. The storm drains are filling up with sand along the way, and you can it leaves a trail behind of silt in the asphalt, and you see it. And to me, it's a beautiful video, quick 10-second video of how impact from development comes from half a mile away, even a mile away or more,
Well, I can also think of a bad thunderstorm where there was a transformer hit and the transformer oil was running straight into the storm drain without any boom or anything, and three National Grid trucks just letting it rip.
So, Andy, so storm drains and then expanding on that and saying man-made wetlands, vegetative swales, dredging of Consu Springs, water retention areas, mentioning all that stuff so that we are saying these are things that really need the attention. I mean, I know that the town is working toward dredging Consu Springs, but is that what we're thinking, what we want in the letter? Or do you want me to just say storm drain repair? I mean, what type of money are we talking that the town might put toward this?
storm drain improvement,
Okay.
repairs, and maintenance. I'm feeling, as a couple other board members are, that at this point, let's stick to that and be specific and not broaden out with too many other issues to spend this on. Let's try to get them to focus on one that really, I mean, to me, that's the top of the list. If the rest of the board feels that way.
But I'm sorry, but in many cases, vegetative swales and the man-made wetland. And
That's okay.
Water retention areas are in the place of.
Yes, those can be included.
Okay. I won't
Because they're related directly to stormwater, so I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right.
That makes it more specific. Clarifies the definition.
Okay.
Ginger, if you wanted to solidify that with a motion?
Well, I would
approve.
move that the letter, Peter write the letter to the Board of Selectmen as we've discussed.
Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
And I'll in addition to dropping copies
Can I
off. for the
just come out to your house,
want,
7:30, 7:45 with that letter?
I don't know if I'll have it done by then.
No, just to drop it off. I'll drop off the letter that.
Oh, sure, yep.
So you can take a look at that and.
Sure.
And craft something short and sweet.
Okay.
You sure you can? I don't want to commit you to something short notice like this. All right. Peter is a journalist, if you didn't all know. So he's Peter's been here much longer than myself, but
That's not true, Andy. You grew up here.
no, on the board.
Oh,
Peter has
okay.
served on the board here much longer than myself, and I've come to really appreciate what Peter does for us here. So thank you, Peter.
Okay.
Moving on to goals and objectives. We've made a list of this in years past, our own thoughts, bring them together. We may take one meeting at some point and have what we call a workshop. Peter started this so that we don't have any public comment. We're simply working on getting ourselves in a direction that's effective. Points, topic points that are of concern to us. If you have personal ones, some of the previous board members that the three of you have replaced, one board member spent a lot of time on eco-friendly moorings, and we entertained a lot of discussion on that. Another was concerned with predators in the harbor, and he did quite a bit of research on that, and we will probably be hearing from Emily on some of her research with the green crab at our next meeting. And another board member with us was also, he was a scientist, Joe LaPuma, and he did a lot of research on growth that could be implemented in the harbor. And if any of you new members here, have something in particular like that, or if you're, on websites a lot, or are capable of researching information that can possibly come up with implementation of new ideas or plans that can help enhance the quality of our water here, like oyster farming. We've all heard now that how much water an oyster can filter, and I can recall there being a lot more rockweed in our harbor. Rockweed was often harvested and used for clam bakes, and I'm curious myself, what kind of benefit does rockweed have in water quality, or kelp, like Mr. LaPuma was looking into before he left, and so if there's something like this that any of you new members would want to pick up on, the rest of us certainly entertain that. Joe also did leave in saying that he felt we had a lot on our plate. We discussed maybe too much at our meetings, need to focus more on one item and try to get to the bottom of it. I feel that's kind of hard to do with the speed of politics. So, though I admired that ambition also, so just trying to throw out some ideas on how you can be helpful to us to be more effective and a louder voice for the right reasons. Any board members' thoughts, discussions on goals and objectives? My thought would be to, since this is some of your first meeting, just jot down your ideas. Peter, do you have a copy with you? I might have a copy.
I didn't bring it, I'm sorry.
And that's all right. But
It's sent it out. for last week's meeting, so if you guys go through your
Yeah,
emails.
I'll never be able to see that.
Pass it on down to Tom, and then Tom get it over to Mr. Bossy. And that's an older one, but we haven't done it in a few years, so goals and objectives kind of keeps us focused, and it prioritizes. We'll prioritize things as top priority down to lower priority. So keep that in mind. Peter, if you want to add to that at all. Did we cover it?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I tend to agree with Joe, you know, we speed of politics, but, you know, we can really stack our agendas sometimes, and then I guess it's all about putting the most important stuff up top and getting to it, but, yeah.
Okay. That's another one we had. You might be able to read that one. Moving forward, new business dredging plan for Nantucket harbors. I just simply feel this is something we need to, you know, this is dating back to our last meeting and an article I read, article that was in the Cape Cod Times about what's going on with dredging projects over there. The Barnstable County Dredge Project, they actually own their own dredge. There's a lot of different reasons why they do dredging. It's not just for navigation. I see reasons for shellfish bed improvement and mitigation from beach replenishment, from climate change effects. So Mr. Franzuto is well rehearsed in this, was working on our own Nantucket Harbor, Nantucket Harbor dredging plan before he retired. So, you know, if anybody wants to do any research on what other towns do, I'm certainly up for that. The Martha's Vineyard also has its own dredge that they've been working on the Great Eggertown Pond for years with, and have, according to an article in last year's Gazette, they took what was pea soup conditions and created clear water to 12 feet deep, where the operator of the dredge claimed he dropped his sledgehammer overboard and could see it on the bottom. Whereas when he started the project 6 years prior, he was not able to see his hand at arm's length underwater. So they've made great improvements with dredging. And as I've mentioned before, some of the general public may see dredging as a four-letter word, but I think if we get some awareness out there and educate that you know, beach replenishment, shoreline reclamation, shellfish bed improvement, that it requires dredging to do those things. So if we add those descriptions to dredging, maybe it would be more palatable to the public to move forward with projects like this. In last week's paper, or 2 weeks ago's paper, if any of you read this, town seeking mitigation money from Vineyard Wind. This is another interesting project offshore, but Vineyard Wind, town officials are looking to Vineyard Wind to fund projects ranging from beach nourishment, dune restoration, creation of an artificial reef as mitigation for any adverse effects the offshore wind farm could have on the island's designation as a National Historic Landmark. also looking for support in the town's coastal resiliency plan and a sand replenishment study. I find this stuff very interesting. So, as far as the board's concerned with this, when you see this kind of thing, be aware of it and try to absorb what's going on. Vineyard Wind last year agreed to pay out $1 million annually for 15 years to be divided among a dozen or more towns on the Cape and Islands closest to the wind farm. The payments would fund municipal projects and start upon completion of the $2 billion project, which Policy and Development Manager Nate Mayo estimated to be 2021. That sounds very aggressive. But in February, this is of more interest to us directly. In February, Vineyard Wind agreed to dole out $4.2 million over 30 years to the Rhode Island Fishermen's Advisory Board.
Pretty well versed in that. I went to quite a few meetings, and that was an atrocity.
Well, this to me is like we as a board should be thinking about, if we're approached with mitigation money from Vineyard Wind, how we would react. We need to be out, boots on the ground, talking to fishermen, people who are affected about this, and how they feel about it. My first feeling is, wow, they're paying off fishermen for what possibly could be damage that could be irreparable. So I would not want to be the Fisherman Advisory Board that agrees to this without having agreement from all of those affected. So that particular paragraph in this article concerns me, and hopefully it concerns the rest of the board, and if any of you walk the docks, you talk to fishermen, get their opinions, get their ideas, and come back and share them with us, because we'll have this on the agenda at our next meeting and meetings to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, some of the items on that list I would prefer to see not happen in any form. But,
Well, and I'm sure you would, Ginger.
You got wind farm.
Right. I don't know. I travel around the island directly on the beaches, and I'm seeing our beaches wash away, and there's beach replenishment that takes place. This is another thing. I could be all green on this, but you can go anywhere from California to Mexico to the Gulf of Mexico and up portions of the East Coast, where as close as New Jersey, where beach replenishment is practiced, and if any of you can find out what studies have been done, has beach replenishment been a negative effect on other ecosystems? So
I'll bring some information.
okay, good. Awesome.
There was a lot of information after Sandy when they rebuilt New Jersey, basically the entire state, on the effect it had offshore. It was devastating. Just wiped out fishing, the nearshore fishing. I came from a commercial port, and those guys come up here to fish, but for the scallopers mostly, but the private fishing, fluke, bluefish, basically just disappeared for years after the rebuilding after Sandy, because they just pumped the whole coast from offshore. It was nothing good came of it. I don't know if it's restocked now since I've been up here.
Well, from the Conservation Commission, one of my concerns is that there's a standard formula for determining how long it takes to restore, which is, I think, based on some study of like trees in Colorado or something, as if one form of life is equal to any other form of life. So, and all the engineers really care about is grain size. So, yeah, that's something we can spend quite a bit of time on, I
All
think.
right, well, certainly tangible evidence and reporting, if any of you are, wish to, gather information like that and bring it in to share, I highly encourage it. So it all sounds like interesting stuff to me, and I would not want to get behind a program that hasn't, that just sounds good but has negative effects. So more education on our part is certainly needed to be able to move forward with discussion like this.
We'll need to get somebody from Tuckernuck here then, because that's where all the sand's going to go. Has anyone been down to the end of Mothball Way and seen the last house at the end? And over the last few years, they've spent, and I know we're not the Conservation Commission, but over the last few years, they've spent an awful lot of money, it seems like, building out that dune and planting beach grass and yada, yada, yada. Now, the winter just took all that away and marched it almost right up to their steps, and the road has been cut off, and so...
Well, the biggest house out there just got moved back, and he drove 40-foot steel sheet pile around his entire property. It'll be amazing when we see that sticking out of the dune, and how far this guy's land will become an island. But I wouldn't expect beach replenishment to last forever. I mean, beaches erode, but very seldom do they come back in some areas. Other areas do get built up. But having more information and educating ourselves on this would certainly be preparing us in a proactive way to some discussion that is going to be culminating in the future here. So I'll leave it at that.
I just, I don't know if other board members are interested, but I recommend a book called The World's Beaches, A Global Guide to the Science of the Shore. It has 4 authors. I think is it Orrin H. Pilkey Jr. is one of the 4, and it's it has a lot of pictures and a lot of information about different coastlines and different effects and how things happen. I'll go into it more.
Can you repeat that title, please, Ginger?
The World's Beaches, subtitle, A Global Guide to the Science of the Shore.
That's a mouthful.
It is. It's a mouthful of sand and rock and other things.
A global guide to...
The science of the shore. There are 4 coastal geologists who contributed to it. From sand to stromatolites to every, rocky coasts. It's quite fascinating.
Board member comments, questions, anything left on dredging? All right, seeing no public, recap items for next weekend.
Next meeting, right?
Our next meeting is in 2 weeks, May 21st.
You said the weekend. I can't be here if we're going to meet on the weekend.
I'm sorry. Any other items anybody'd like to discuss?
So you definitely want something about Vineyard Wind and how we're going to be prepared if they're going to come at us and ask us if we want money.
I spoke with Krista Banks today, who said,
There you go. Just pull it toward you. Yeah.
I spoke with Krista Banks today, who's one of the fishermen liaisons from Vineyard Wind. I've gotten to be quite friendly with her because I've been going to meetings about Vineyard Wind for quite a while now, off island, all over the place. Gloucester, down in Rhode Island. I've been going to them all winter. You don't want to know my opinion on the Vineyard Wind because it's going to drive a stake through the.
That's why you're here. We
Well-
want to know your opinion.
That wind farm is going to put me out of lobster business south of this island without a doubt. Those things are going in. We're supposedly going in right smack dab where I harvest lobsters for 8-10 months out of the year. So I want nothing to do with that vineyard wind coming here. You know, I've done a lot of research on those wind farms, and they're not a bad thing
Aren't
on
all
land.
those rocks around the base of them going to attract lobsters?
Well, there's numerous problems with it. One of them is I was at a meeting in New Bedford probably 3 weeks ago with everybody from NOAA, National Marine Fisheries Service, Division of Marine Fisheries, and Vineyard Wind. And Boehm was there, just some of the people that were at the meeting we had here. And they're not going to let us in there, is what's going to happen. The two head honchos from Coast Guard were there. They had medals from here to there on their chest. And one of the guys in the group that I was with asked them two guys, for a safety standpoint, in the middle of the winter in February when it's blowing 40 out, and there's a problem down there because that's the highway from New Bedford to Georges. If there's a problem down there, are you people going to be able to come and get us in your helicopter? And they wouldn't answer the question on TV with cameras or microphones around. And we followed them out in the parking lot, and they still wouldn't answer the question, but they were standing there. Those things, at the closest point, they're going to be 0.6 of a mile apart from each other. Now, you get a helicopter flying down there. I believe they're 800 feet tall and 600 feet wide. You know, they're not going to come in there and get us for a helicopter. So the mobile gear fishermen have already said they're not going to be able to go in there because they can't tow their nets over these cement carpets that they're going to put down. And they say they're going to put these cables 6 to 8 feet down, especially the one going through Muskegon Channel. They're going to jet it down 6 to 8 feet. I've got extensive experience pumping clams over Muskegon Channel, and 1 minute there's 10 feet of sand, the tide changes, and that sand's gone. So that cable they're going to put in there is going to be flopping through the wind, basically, so to speak. So that area is going to be closed.
Up in the currents.
Exactly, yeah. It's just, it's maddening what those things are going to do down there. I mean, there's different documentaries that are out. I'll try to get some information on it, but she called me today when I was out hauling gear, and there's talk about funding the Massachusetts fishermen. And the meeting we were at a few weeks ago, they hired some guy, Dr. King, that did an economical impact statement for the area where the 84 wind turbines are going to go. And he came to a conclusion that in the year 2017, there was $196,000 harvested from that massive area. And I put my hand up and I said, is that the average per boat? And the guy said, no, that's everything together, all the people that work down there. Now, so they're going to basically base their payouts on that. We harvested $196,000 from that area. I know guys that lobster fish down there that do more than that per boat. Never mind the squid boats.
I was just going to say, all the
stall
squid boats.
Well, even if you thought wind farms were a good idea in the ocean, it does make one wonder how, if one of them breaks down or there's some problem in the gears in the winter, how they're going to get in to repair them.
Helicopters and boats.
Uh-huh.
One of the representatives from Oristad, which is a subsidiary of Shell Oil, has offered. I've been offered a couple of different jobs down there, and I said, nah, I'm all set. You know, not going to join the dark side. But this is how green those wind turbines are going to be. Now, each one of those is an engine, which requires maintenance, like a truck engine. You got to change the oil in it. So I don't know how many gallons, because they keep bumping up the size of the generators that are going to be on these things. The bigger they get, the more oil they hold. How are they going to pump oil from the 600 feet up in the air? You know, either with that one guy said there's going to be 20 to 25 boats a day, maintenance boats, leaving New Bedford to go down there. What's so green about that?
But I believe it's mineral oil, right? That's what they use, and
Yeah,
the oil is somehow down in the base and pumped up top or something.
They burn, though.
There were 25 boats. have to motor out there.
And then helicopters too. Then there's going to be, I don't know what they call it, but like a hub. There's going to be a building down there where everything kind of runs through. It's just, it's asinine what they're trying to do. I mean, and the numbers that they're throwing out are crazy. You know, it's like, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. I'll see what I can get. There's a documentary. Oh, I can't remember the name of it. It was some people got together over in England after a wind farm got crammed down their throats, and it ruined the area where they put this in. It changed the tidal currents, everything. It's ruined the whole area. And I don't know. It's smoke and mirrors. It's what I think it is.
Well, it would be interesting if they ended up having to replace Tuckernuck as mitigation.
Yeah. I don't know if the people on Tuckernuck would want that. I know several people that live over there, and they like it the way it is.
Well, I don't know how much the industry has progressed.
You are not going to find too many commercial fishermen that, that like that wind farm.
And I can imagine, so I know people on land who can't stand them because of the effects it's had on their little villages in Lowell, Vermont, no relation to myself, but being familiar and having some acquaintances in the area, when they did the mountaintop ones there, they had to, create a road system. They have crews of people, 3 different shifts, and these wind turbines are constantly monitored. They have big, F-550 trucks with snow plows on them to keep the roads open so that they can get to each turbine 3 times a day, 7 days a week. And I've been told that, oh, no, they won't need that type of monitoring. That will all be done electronically. I have a hard time believing that because I know for a fact that these guys in these trucks monitor these turbines on the hills of Vermont every day, still to this day. It was only built about 10 years ago. So that aside, our biggest concern at this point to me would be being prepared if we're approached as the Rhode Island Fishermen's Advisory Board was, and how would we react? How do the fishermen feel? Do you want a payoff? Do you want the Shellfish Advisory Board or some committee on the island of Nantucket to accept payments for mitigation for your losses from the ocean? So to me, this is what we need to be concerned with, and it's any negative effects on the fishery, whether our jurisdiction can go out that far or not. But we need to focus on the fishery and also this payout mitigation, I'll call it.
Excuse me, just one quick thing. Our jurisdiction covers the people who pull some of their living from the ocean. So whether that's beyond the 3-mile limit or not, we should at least have a say. Mm-hmm. We're just advisory, so we're not going to be able to rule and say this regulation is going to happen, but absolutely we can. We have a platform for our voice to be heard, right? And I want to be up to speed on this and prepared to make a statement if we need to.
But I believe there were two different offers to the FAB, it's called, the Fishermen's Advisory Board. The first one was like $16 million or something, and I was at that meeting, and they wouldn't discuss the number in an open room with the group of fishermen because they were probably afraid they weren't going to get out of the room. The CEO, Lauer something was his name, was there in his $1 million suit, and he had 3 people on each side of him, I would imagine were all attorneys, and he wasn't speaking. The attorneys were all talking, and it's crazy. They were supposed to have a presentation the previous meeting and they didn't bring it, and then this meeting we were at, they guaranteed they were gonna have a proposal and a number and all this, and they smoke and mirrored it. Now, here's a perfect for instance. Now, they're supposed to start jet plowing that cable in the fall from over on the Cape, and they're gonna run it down through Muskegon Channel next fall and try to get it down to site down there by next fall, they're talking. Now, they're just approaching fishermen now. They called me about a month ago and wanted to know if I would do a ventless trap survey down there, which basically means I set lobster gear down there with no escape fence in it. You know, there's no way for the lobsters to get out, so it catches every lobster. Now, this is something they probably should have started doing about 5 years ago, not 6 or 7 months before the project's going to start. You know, this is how this whole organization operates. I've said you people should sell used cars. I said it's a smoke and mirrors thing. It's madness. That some of the stuff these people are trying to pull off, and people are drinking it right down like it's the greatest thing in the world. You know, I'm not opposed to green energy, but not this mess down there. You know, it's crazy.
16 million to just basically buy off this group, basically saying that you won't be able to, once they get the money, then you can't get up and oppose the project and
Pretty much.
continue with your whatever legal means to stop it or whatever.
Well, yes, pretty much. But what had happened is they had contacted some of the government down in Rhode Island, some of the elected officials, and it was a last minute deal. They came back with $4.2 million, and they said, this is our number that we're going to offer you. If you don't accept it, then we're going to go back in and renegotiate, and it's probably going to go lower. So their hands were basically tied, and they said, well, we got to take this or we're basically going to get nothing. And $4.2 million to be dispersed through not just the fishermen, but, you know, you got Shoreside Industries, over 30 years. It's a glass of water and a bowl of soup is basically what they're offering everybody down there, you know. And none of this money is going to get doled out until this project gets all the final signatures from, you know, the government and whoever else has to sign off on it.
So they're taking a guess on what you're going to make if the project didn't come along at all. They're taking a guess on what you're going to lose because the project's there, right?
The project's there. It's not 100% gone through yet. They think it has, and the Vineyard Wind refers to that area down there as their property now. It's not our property, it's theirs, because they're spending the money to lease the property down there. Every time you open another drawer, another skeleton jumps out of it. It's just like, I don't understand how people are following this, but not following it, but supporting it. You know, there's such big money for these foreign companies that, you know, like the research boats they have down there right now. If you look on the automatic, the AIS systems, they're all foreign flag boats. They're not even employing American boats right now to do all this surveying, you know, and it's supposed to benefit our country. It's madness.
Well, Dan, you being one of just a handful of fishermen based out of Nantucket, if you could, a very small handful, if you could get the opinions of the other.
Well, the problem is
I would just hate to make an announcement or state an opinion or give our voice on this and have somebody come back and say, you're basically standing up for the one fisherman that's on your board, and or something of that concern, seeing as we really don't have any, you know. Bill Blount's still keeping Nantucket painted on the stern of his boat, and his opinion, he said we could always reach out to him for information, but I would want to be able to, you know, have some names and numbers, not just Dan Pronk's opinion.
well,
But we're relying heavily on your opinion, but I want you to, if you can, you know, reach out to other guys who are working in the same area as you. You have an affiliation with a boat in Hyannis, so get us some more names that we can just throw out there, so to speak, No, we're not just listening to Dan Prock. We have
I think you find every
a
fisherman
large
you
group.
talk to that
Yeah.
works down south of the island.
I think what Andy is asking is that you get to talk to them, and then we have
Yeah.
a broader base of information. But thank you for bringing what you've brought.
I've been going to meetings
Thanks,
of this for
Ginger.
a long time, and
Because it looks here, if you read further into this lengthy article, the select board is coming up with ideas and ways to use this money if it's offered. So, I like to be in the position to refuse the money if it's not the right thing to do. I don't want to just jump on the bandwagon and grab, stick my hand out for any money that's being offered. It has to be money for the right reasons. And like mitigation for impacts of tourism and development coming from the Airbnb tax. I don't want to just take money from Vineyard Wind, dole it out to fishermen that in 10 years the money's run out, or in 25 years or whatever, there's no money left and you still have no place to fish.
but once they open Pandora's boxes, which a lot of us are referring to it down there, it's over. I mean, you've got the right whales down south of the island that everybody goes down south of the island and screams and yells about the beautiful right whales, which is great. Well, they're going to pile drive pilings 160 feet, not from the top of the water, into the seafloor. Now, we have what's called a dynamic area management zone. If I have lobster gear in an area and a pod of right whales swims into the area, the federal government will sometimes implement a 48-hour removal of your gear under penalty of fines. So I got to go out and move my lobster gear. It doesn't matter what the weather is, and move it. But yet, the wind farm people paid the whale people supposedly $3.5 million to come on board with them. And the whale people don't have a problem with the pile driving. If a right whale pod swims up into the area, the construction area, Vineyard Wind has agreed to stop all construction until they swim away. Now, I said at that meeting at the Athenaeum, I said, you have a 2-year window, supposedly, from when you stop breaking ground to when those things are supposed to be spinning and producing power. Now, I don't see how they're going to get 84 wind turbines up and running in 2 years. What's that, 720 days, I think it is? Now, what if a pod of right whales swims into the area for 300 days? How are you going to get it done in half the time? What if they don't leave? Cape Cod Bay is closed right now. East of the Cape is closed for the 5th year in a row now because of the right whales. Can't set your lobster gear, can't set gill nets. They opened it up federal waters north of P-Town last week, but still all Cape Cod Bay is closed till May 14th because of an active pile of right whales. Nobody wants to entangle them, but the whale people don't have a problem with the wind farms now because they got paid. And like I said, we all know once you stop pile driving these things 160 feet down, anything in that area, whales, birds, anything in the water is going to vacate the area. I mean, Ginger, you're a birder. I asked the people.
I know, but this is the Harbor and Shellfish Advisory
yeah.
Board, so I've purposely refrained from discussing birds.
I asked the bird expert that they had on
Fowl.
I asked the bird expert, how many birds a year do they calculate one of those wind turbines kills? And the lady said, one.
I would say that's probably on a par with the amount of income that you're losing.
What's that supposed to mean?
It means it vastly underestimates
Sure, yeah. All right, I get you.
what the impact is. Probably by a factor of 1,000, at least.
All right. Well, our awareness is, you've been made aware. So, anything interesting that comes up, jot it down, bring it in. Let's stay on top of that issue for sure. Any other comments, board members? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Yep, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
David, can you clarify?